Every hand counts, and for Houston, the rookies have had just as much of an impact as the rest of the team during this four-game win streak.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily podcast on the Houston Texans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Battle Red Nation, from H-Town to your town, today's episode. And every episode of the Locked On Texans podcast is for Texan fans all around. Got a fun show for you guys today. Going to look at righting the wrongs. Laken Tomlinson has now been waived by the Houston Texans. Who could have saw that coming, right? It was a mistake at the beginning of free agency. It was a mistake when they got to training camp. And now the Houston Texans have realized, hey, it's time to move on from that player. With the injuries to the Houston Texans, for the Houston Texans at safety, is it time for Houston to look outside of the NRG, outside of their roster currently, and maybe look for some outside help to give them what they need, whether it be depth or maybe a trustworthy starter to finish out this year? But I want to open up today's show just looking at how much impact have the rookies had during this four-game stretch. We cannot overlook the youngins having a good imprint for the Houston Texans. So that's where we're going to kick off today's show. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. And also, guys, my apologies. I am your Texans credential media member and football analyst, John Hickman. Thank you for making the Locked On Texans podcast your first listen of the day, and for making the Locked On Podcast Network now the number one sports podcast in the nation. For the rookies, they've had, I think, some people may view it as minimal, but how this team has been put together, how they started the rookies in the last 5 games, specifically during this 4-game win streak, they've all played a role in how Houston has come to this point in the season where they're 7-5. But just looking at November, between Higgins, Woody Marks, and Ariante Ursery, obviously the 3 best rookies on this team for Houston, they've had their hand in the pot of success for Houston. It still feels like Houston is rolling with Christian Kirk over Jalen Noel right now. That feeling is also combined with not necessarily having a clear plan of action for Jalen Noel. So hopefully one day Houston can figure that out. But for the month of November, Higgins saw his most consistent stretch of games, 204 total yards, 60 from hitches that were ran the hitch route. Each week it felt like there was another route where he's winning differently. So one week it may be a hitch route, one week it may be a go route, one week it may be an out route, but he's showing his versatility and showing different ways that he's able to win at the line of scrimmage. He's had a 55-yarder, a 65-yarder. Then we go back to that Buffalo game where the numbers don't tell the full story, right? That was the game where I said, okay, for Houston, they will absolutely need quarterback C.J. Stroud back. He's also posted 2 TDs, 13 first downs during this stretch as well. So from a receiving standpoint, who has the Houston Texans been able to count on all year? Honestly, it's been up and down, especially considering how the beginning of the year started with Nico Collins. But during the month of February, it's been Nico, it's been Dalton Schultz. Right under Schultz, it has absolutely been Jaden Higgins. The number that I like the most, obviously, we'll look at the 2 touchdowns and how he came about getting those 2 touchdowns. Listen, I think he's just a good receiver in the red zone when you put him in the slot. I think he's a better red zone target than Nico Collins. I said it coming out of the draft. I said it during the season. I think that he, and especially in the middle of that red zone, I think he's a better target. But the number that I like the most for Houston, and it shows more of his value, the 13 first downs. And with Higgins, just like the rest of the rookies outside of Ariante Ursery, it's been a very inconsistent ride. So when he's out on that field, what sticks out the most? And honestly, it just feels like he's a guy that at this point in his career, if you throw him the ball, he may not get a lot of yak yards, at least currently, but he can get you a first down. And if he can get you a first down, then he's helping keeping these drives alive. And so that's the value, in my opinion, of Jaden Higgins right now. Let's go to Woody Marks. 272 rushing yards. Now, Houston has shied away from using him in the receiving game, and I've been disappointed with that. Right? We've seen him make big splash plays in the receiving game this year, but if we look at him as a runner, 272 rushing yards on the ground, only 3.5 yards per carry. That's not good. But again, 16 first downs. I'm looking at both of these two young men, and I'm looking at the inconsistencies around them, whether that may be snap share, whether that may be play design, whether that may be, for whatever reason, the elements are not working in the favor of their player. When they have gotten out on the field, what I've saw and I've noticed is these guys are able to get you some first downs, and these guys are able to help sustain drives. Lastly, I look at Ariante Ursery. His absolutely best stretch of games during his young career. Only 3 sacks allowed in the month of November, 0 sacks in 3 of the 5 games, 3.4 pressures per game during this stretch, only 1 sack in the fourth quarter, only 2 second half sacks. He's also only allowing 2 pressures per second half during this stretch of games. And during this stretch of games, CJ wasn't out there for all of them. We know that he missed 3 games, right? We know that there's a difference in terms of the quarterback play and how offensive linemen have to approach the game and how they want to block. Luckily for the Houston Texans, they have 2 standard pocket quarterbacks, right? But I think we look at the teams that they played. It took on Denver. Took on Denver during that stretch. Took on Jacksonville during that stretch where I thought that he really came alive. I thought he had a great game against Denver as well. Took on Tennessee where we saw the 2 sacks that he allowed this year. Two of the 3 sacks during this stretch of games he allowed. And that also took place in the third and fourth quarter. And I'm also looking at going up against Buffalo and Greg Rousseau, just the job that he did in that second half. No sacks. Looking at the job he did against Indy, no sacks in the second half. So he's getting better, and he's also improving in the midst of the game being played, which is an underrated, I think, is extremely underrated when we look at how good these young men have been for Houston, and more so when we look at the imprint that they've had on the games. Is it flashy? No, it is not. Has it stood out more times than not? Maybe, maybe not. It depends on if you're a diehard Texas fan, if you're a fly-by-night Texas fan. It doesn't matter. But these guys have done some dirty work. When I look at Ariante Arsery up in the mix and at the line of scrimmage, they've done some things, and I think what I like the most is they've overcome the situation issues. They've overcome their circumstances. They've overcome, in a lot of ways, just halves or drives or quarters of just inconsistent approach into how to play the game and how to score, rather. So Higgins, Marks, and Ursery, I think that they've done a good job in this stretch of games. We need to talk about them a lot more. We're looking at 3 of the first 4 picks for Houston in this past draft. You like to hear that about Higgins. You like to hear that about Ursery. They were 2 of the first 3 taken, the top 2 players taken off the board for the Houston Texans, and they have shown their value, especially during this stretch of games. Now, the next stretch of games, Houston is going to continue to need them to play well, but also with the injuries to Jalen Reed, no update on Jimmy Ward. Do we expect to see Jimmy Ward? The Houston Texans, may have problems with their safety position. So how can Houston go about making sure that they have everything that they absolutely need to finish off the year in the secondary?
Today's show is brought to you by our friends over there at Peloton. Look, folks, it's time to break through the busiest time of the year with a brand new Peloton cross-training Tread Plus that's powered by Peloton IQ. It's Peloton's most elevated technology and equipment yet that gives you real-time guidance, and it gives you endless ways to move, whether you want to work out by yourself or if you want to work out with your favorite instructor, like my personal favorite, Alex Toussaint. He always gets me fired up to tackle the day. And the thing I like about Peloton, it helps me achieve more in less times. They have features that help you plan, stay motivated, track your progress, and Peloton IQ also provides personalized workout plans and recommendations. That's something that I use right now during the busiest time of the year covering the NFL. They plan my workouts for me based on my mood, my vibe, and also my favorite instructors. So make sure you check it out and use it, because it also helps you correct your form in real time, and it maximizes your reps. It counts your reps so that you can do it smarter, safer, and more efficient. Let yourself run, lift, flex, push, and go. Explore the new Peloton cross-training Tread Plus at onepeloton.com.
Welcome back, Texan fans. As we look at the secondary for Houston, by the way, Derek Stingley continues to be lights out. And since he's arrived in Houston, it always felt like the second half of the season for Derek Stingley has normally been where he's shown his real value. Last year, I think we see more of it in terms of being able to take the ball away. This year, it's just not allowing guys to get in the game. So in back-to-back years, you have a Champ Bailey type of year, and then this year, Stingley, especially since the recovery of that oblique injury, more so of a Nnamdi Asomugha in Oakland type year, where he's just not allowing anybody to get off and he's not getting any targets his way. So Derek Stingley continues to be great, but for the Houston Texans secondary, Jalen Smith is on IR. Jalen Reed, he's up in the air right now, doubtful. MJ Stewart on IR. Jimmy Ward is out. No update on Jimmy Ward and whether or not he'll be ready for Houston. Also against the Colts, whenever we saw Reed go down with his injury, Miles Bryant stepped up 12 snaps in the box, 10 at safety. And he finished out the game for the Houston Texans at the safety position, just kind of doing it all, which he's done for Houston this past couple of years. In his reserve role, 34 yards allowed to Josh Downs, 12 yards allowed to Tyler Warren, 2 first downs, and the touchdown that Tyler Warren scored on. So obviously Houston has a lot of familiarity with Miles Bryant. He's been in Houston for the past 2 seasons. But when I look at the guys who are out, I think it's fair to say, Miles Bryant should not be the only backup for Houston right now. They got 3 guys on IR, 2 guys on IR, 1 guy no update, Jimmy Ward. Jalen Reed, I believe Coach said that he doesn't feel like this would be a season-ending injury, but he's going to miss some games, and he's going to miss some crucial games for Houston. So the question is right now for the Houston Texans, what should they do? Should it be just strictly in-house? Should they go to look and bring in players from the outside of the building, maybe some guys with playoff experience, especially since they're going on this playoff stretch, that can really add value to the Houston Texans secondary? It's also important to remember to remind guys that Jalen Mills is still an option for Houston. He is currently on the Texans practice squad. He has played in 3 games this year, started in 1 game for Houston, has a combined total of 4 tackles. So I think this is a good challenge for Houston to figure out, can we move forward with Jalen Mills? I don't think that's going to be enough. Can they move forward with just who they have out there right now? Houston runs a ton of cover 3. So a lot of the time, that second safety has been reserved for the role of Jalen Petrie. They've used not Jalen Petrie, but they've used Miles Bryant a lot when we've seen a Kalen Bullock. But because they run a lot of cover 3, Kalen Bullock is typically the only high man safety. Is that enough for Houston? And I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'm going to say no. I think Houston should absolutely start calling agents for some of the players that are free agents right now. Marcus Williams, Justin Simmons, is probably my favorite option out there right now, simply because he has a ton of experience, played the game at an extremely high level. He is 32, so we're not. If I'm Houston, we're not asking Simmons to play a full season. That's not the case. We're not asking some of these guys who has a ton of experience to play a full season. The only question right now is, can you give us 5 games? And Houston ain't gonna get nobody in here in time for Sunday. So can you give us 4 games? And in those 4 games, are you able to give us between 15 to 18 snaps, if that? Right? And I think Simmons could probably still give Houston some good snaps. Marcus Williams could probably give Houston still some good snaps. And so I think it's a good dilemma for Houston right now, simply considering it's a very important dilemma to be in. Again, they have Jalen Mills. They have Miles Bryant. Miles Bryant stepped up for Houston a couple of times this year, but this hasn't been his best year since entering the league. By far, I would say, even in his reserve role for the Houston Texans, Miles Bryant this has been somewhat of a down year for Bryant. I'm looking at some of the things he was able to do for the Houston Texans last year. Last year, only a 52.6 completion percentage. This year, that's up by 20%. 2 touchdowns allowed this year compared to 1 last year. And all of this is taken with a grain of salt because he hadn't appeared in the amount of games this year as he's appeared in prior to this year in 2024. So if I'm Houston, guys, if I'm Houston, I'm going to see who's out there. I'm going to see who's out there, whether it be from another team's practice squad, but more so from the guys that have been free agents and maybe just waiting for a call. This is a perfect spot for Houston to be in. It won't cost a lot of money because you're at the year's end. These guys will not be the savior. Kalen Bullock is playing good football. Jalen Petre's back. He's playing good football. He's played good football all year. So some of these guys that are coming in that's been available, if they come in for Houston, I just need you for 3 games at the least if we can make this playoff run, because they're not going to be ready for Sunday. So that knocks you down to 4 weeks. Houston typically likes to give a ramp-up period. So 3 games, and in that 3-game stretch, can you give us 10 to 18 snaps? That's about it. And if there's a player out there that is physically in shape that's ready to do that, and also who has playoff experience, who has postseason experience, who's out there, can you give us those snaps in this amount of games for this contract that's favorable for both sides? Obviously, that player is still a free agent, so there wasn't a lot of asking of that player going on throughout the year, and it has been like a great year for safeties. And then for Houston, we just need you for this amount of time. Nothing for the future, just right now. And I think Houston has just a little bit under $7 million in available cap space, so they should be able to get that done. Righting the wrongs of the season, Tomlinson is now gone for Houston. Been a few in-season decisions from Houston move on from players. So let's just kind of close out the show with that. We got more Locked On Texas talk when we get back. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team is making their late game push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when you play your first $5 bet, and if that $5 bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Closing out today's show, looking at some of the decisions Houston decided to roll with in the offseason that has completely backfired to the point where they've moved on from the player, Cam Robinson, CJ Gardner-Johnson, now Laken Tomlinson. And also, this wasn't a free agent decision, but just a player that Houston should have been moved on from, Dameon Pierce. That is 4 players in season where Houston has either opted to waive or move on from their player by trade. And I got to tell you, man, I wonder what this season might have looked like because we see the addition of Trent Brown at right tackle. Trent Brown is the player that can play both right and left. But would this season have gone a little bit better earlier on if they kept Cam Robinson to left and moved Ursary to right? I think what Houston wants to avoid is creating another Titus Howard situation. D'Amico Ryans wasn't here for Titus Howard being bounced around. And so I think he wants a foundation. I think the franchise wants a foundation at left tackle. So that was their decision. But it kind of makes me wonder what the season could have possibly looked like. Now, moving forward, CJ Gardner-Johnson, that probably was the best move for Houston, albeit now we look at the end of the year. They're having secondary issues, which is why I think that's a good problem for Houston to be in. Could he have helped now? Who knows? It's hard to tell, but he didn't help out in the future, in the past, to kick off the year. Dameon Pierce is out, but to Laken Tomlinson, this was absolutely the right move. What purpose does Laken serve now for Houston? I think that how everything is played out, they know who their depth guys are. And I think that was difficult for Houston, not knowing who to really lean on just in case you need to break the glass. But they know they got Jared Patterson there. They know that they have Juice Scruggs there. Those guys, when they play well enough for Houston to trust them, and their ceiling is a lot higher than Laken Tomlinson. A lot higher. So, and then also we're looking at Titus Howard being able to play that left guard position. Ed Ingram has played phenomenally this year. I don't know if he would count as a Pro Bowl vote, if he would get a Pro Bowl vote, but he's been playing some very good football for the Houston Texans. So this is one of those moments where Houston, and they do this a lot, you kind of got to bite the bullet and move on from a decision that was just a complete mistake. And that's just what the facts is. The facts are. Laken Tomlinson came into the offseason being one of the worst graded offensive linemen. In the past 2 seasons, I think he's allowed 12 or 13 sacks. Not a good number. Didn't provide much in the run game. So on all factors, it's just been bad for LT, Laken Tomlinson, here in Houston. Houston may have looked at Tomlinson like they've looked at a Juice, a Jared, and an Andrews. If we get Cole Popovich in here as the head guy, his background, what he sold us on, and by the way, Cole Popovich, Cole P has done well, right, in his role. Maybe he could turn that young man around, but he wasn't able to. And each week it became more and more, how can I put this? Each week it felt like it was inevitable that they were going to have to move on from him. They had to try to rotating guards out. That didn't work. I was just frustrating to watch altogether. Then it felt like no Juice can win this out. No Jared can win this out. Then when she moved Titus Howard over there, because Trent Brown is active, if you look at their left guard depth, it felt like LT was just a third man. And if you're the third man at this point in the season, after the trade deadline, nobody was going to trade for him, it's best to move on. It's best to move on. Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Locked On Texan podcast. Please be sure to subscribe, like, and comment on YouTube, wherever you listen to your podcast. Follow me on Twitter at John_Hickman12. It's Wednesday. Houston got the Kansas City coming up. How poetic would it be if Houston can knock out KC from the playoffs? I'm rooting for Houston. The crossover Thursday is going to be fun, of course. Until next time, ladies and gents, Texas fans across the nation, peace.